Hello again, and welcome back to the Slow Flowers Podcast with Deborah Prinzing, episode 479. This is the weekly podcast about American flowers and the people who grow and design with them. It's all about making a conscious choice, and I invite you to join the conversation and the creative community as we discuss the vital topics of saving our domestic flower farms and supporting a floral industry that relies on a safe, seasonal, and local supply of flowers and foliage. This podcast is brought to you by slowflowers.com, the free nationwide online directory to florists, shops, and studios who design with American-grown flowers, and to the farms that grow those blooms. It's the conscious choice for buying and sending flowers. Our first sponsor thanks goes to the Association of Specialty Cut Flower Growers. Formed in 1988, ASCFG was created to educate, unite, and support commercial cut flower growers. Its mission is to help growers produce high-quality floral material and to foster and promote the local availability of that product. Learn more at ascfg.org. Back in 2013, during the first year of the Slow Flowers podcast, I interviewed a young floral designer from the San Francisco East Bay area, who at the time was one of the only voices talking about sustainable design practices. I called her Berkeley's eco-floral maven, and I wrote this: Pilar Zuniga is blazing a new trail and is the true definition of a local florist. She has a hometown Main Street flower shop that goes the full distance to source from local flower farms in her own backyard. Remember, this was in the early days of Instagram, and when it came to visually exciting storytelling, at least online, individual bloggers still reigned. As early as 2008, when Pilar launched Gorgeous and Green as an event floral business, and later as a local Berkeley retail floral and gift shop, which happened between 2010 and 2016, Pilar used her blog to write about sustainability concerns, including chemical-free design techniques and mechanics. She doesn't use sprays, glues, or floral foam at all. Today, Instagram is home to Pilar's online presence, where followers are drawn to her vibrant aesthetic, often portrayed against a distinctive turquoise teal wall, a color rarely found in flowers, but they sure present well with flowers in front of them. The flowers and foliage that Pilar selects are locally grown and, when available, are organic or non-sprayed. Gorgeous and Green supports local growers and farms who are doing their best to continue to keep local crops available in the Bay Area. I'm so pleased to welcome Pilar Zuniga as a return guest to the Slow Flowers podcast. I really can't believe that 7 years have transpired since early listeners of this show first met her. You're in for a treat. But as a bonus, I provided the link to her first appearance in episode 116 from November 2013, as well as a link to the feature about Gorgeous and Green that I wrote for the November 2019 issue of Florist Review. You can find both in the show notes for today's episode at deborahprinzing.com. Before we get started, here's a bit more about Pilar Zuniga, excerpted from her website. A California native, Pilar came to the Bay Area to attend UC Berkeley. Her interests then and now include biology, art, and culture. She is fond of painting, drawing, ceramics, sewing, and embroidery, remaking old things, finding vintage goods, gardening, and ballet. She is a feminist, a Latina, and a colorful individual who loves dogs and smiles often. Her floral design is born out of a desire to be creative and to support a local movement of flower growers. I'll share photos and links to all of Pilar's social places, so let's jump right in and get started. Welcome back to the Slow Flowers podcast with Deborah Prinzing, and today I'm so thrilled to have a return guest, Pilar Zuniga of Gorgeous and Green. Hi, Pilar.
Hi there.
Thanks for coming back.
Yeah, happy to be back.
You're based in Oakland. We were doing a little reminiscing before we turned on the recorder that you were the 17th guest ever on the Slow Flowers podcast, and that was in 2013. That's amazing.
Yes, time flies, one.
Yeah. And we are going to talk about kind of the trajectory of what's happened to you and Gorgeous and Green since then. But I went back and looked at the the headline for that. And actually, are you in Oakland or Berkeley?
I'm in Oakland now, but I
Okay.
started in Berkeley, which
Right.
actually makes a lot of sense of why. I mean, I think it was twofold, but I wanted to be in Berkeley, and that's where some of the sustainability mindset came from, and I think it also was kind of, I think people swallowed it a lot easier there
Mm-hmm.
during that time. So, but now I moved to Oakland and I still cover Berkeley, but
Sure. You have clients in both places. At the time you had a retail store, and I put in the headline, Meet Berkeley's eco-floral maven, Pilar Zuniga of Gorgeous and Green. November 20th of 2013. I can't believe it. So you were really an early adopter pioneer in branding your whole floral enterprise around sustainability. So we can talk a little bit about the history, but I am going to include a link to that earlier episode in the show notes so people can hear the earlier version of Pilar talking about her dreams and visions and her strategy and her branding. But a lot has happened since then. So maybe you can give us a snapshot of the business now. Despite COVID, you've been very busy and active, which is exciting.
yes, I'd love to. Yeah. So right now my business, as it's in its 12th year, I guess. So this manifestation includes a pretty, well functioning website that actually has a Shopify store on it that I've had on there for quite some time now. So I take orders all through the Shopify. For various reasons, over time, I just realized that I had to keep my sanity, and I just couldn't be answering the phone all the
Mm,
time.
mm.
And I also had to simplify what I offered. So I have various things, and sometimes I change them out depending on how I feel, but it's kind of all built already. So I can decide basically week to week. And right now with COVID, I've slimmed down quite a bit. So I'm only delivering on Fridays, and I'm doing small events, which is also through my website. So I sort of, I think pretty early on, not quite as many people were doing it when I first started, where I tried to direct clients to the website to order for small events. And it does take some education, but that has actually really helped my business flow as well. So I've got those things always happening. So
Mm-hmm.
that's always kind of working without me having to work. And then I'm doing some education
Mm-hmm.
and doing some virtual workshops, of course, right now, because that's with the time that we're in. And I took over Ponderosa and Times Instagram account for a week
I
and did
saw
some,
that. That was
yeah,
fun.
it was fun. Did some virtual education on
Demos.
there and inspiration, and that was a lot of fun. And overall, just kind of figuring out how to negotiate the new COVID experience. And also because I am a new mother, a new parent.
Yes. Just
So
to make life more crazy.
I have less time. So
Right.
part of the reason why I'm only doing the deliveries on Fridays, I probably, if I wasn't so strapped for time, I'd probably be doing a little bit more.
Because the
In
demand
public.
is probably there, right?
Yeah, the demand is there, which is really great. I think for flowers and for floral design, because people are still needing, I think even more so now that people can't be with each other as much, they really want to send love to each other. So um, I noticed that in the very beginning of COVID, before I became a mom, that people were just sending
Right.
me emails. When are you going to do deliveries? Can you get me
Well,
flowers?
yeah, and I remember we had a couple exchanges back in March, April, where um, you were you had made a decision, I think, just because of the regulations or the policies in the Bay Area, you just had to stop 100% stop for a while, which was sort of upsetting too, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
how did you handle that? How long did that take before you could start doing contact free deliveries and, whatever it's called, no contact deliveries.
I think I stopped for a full month. I think a full month, but everybody was kind of like not sure,
Hmm.
what we were up to. And because I think we have, the population of the Bay Area is pretty large, and there's a lot of movement between all the cities. There's a lot of different cities here, a lot of different
Yeah.
counties, and a lot of movement. People are driving through 3 counties to get to work or something like that. So
Right.
you got to think about the fact that there's could be more transference. So yeah, I think, and especially and with flowers too, like, even me getting local flowers, I am getting flowers that have come from maybe 3 different counties. So just thinking about like, so yeah, it was just a little scary. I just kind of quit all around, sat at home. We all kind of got depressed. Um, but then I started doing virtual stuff online on Instagram and did virtual workshops, and people started to really like that.
Yeah.
And it was good to see. And people are still really into it. Most of, I'm just trying to figure out like, how do I offer that to more than just the people in my immediate community?
Right. Like
So
your
that's,
customer base.
yeah. So how am I, and that's something for kind of on my future plan plate
Oh,
of
good.
like,
Well, let's talk about that before we wrap up. I have a couple other questions, though, that come to mind. Well, Pilar, you've always had this focus on locally grown and, knowing the farmer. And I mean, this has been a part of your business since I've met you and, 7 years ago. Where are you getting your flowers and how did COVID affect that? Because the San Francisco flower market closed too, right?
did. That was difficult trying to figure out how to get flowers. Like when I was ready to start delivering and doing like this whole process of like wearing gloves and wearing a mask and dealing with people and doing the drop off and calling them and watching from, 20 feet away to make sure they got them.
Ay,
Um,
ay, ay.
and at first it was kind of freaky. Now we're just kind of used to it. But yeah, I think I had to just reach out. I was calling folks, my local rose grower. I was like, "Hey, what's going on? How do I get your roses?" So for a while I would put in, and I'm not an orderer. I don't like
Okay.
to order flowers and pick them up. I like to pick them out from what people have.
You want to
I'm very
actually have
particular that way.
that sensory experience of seeing and yeah, got it.
Yeah, it's part of my design process where I'm like, oh, I'm looking at it as I'm taking it, and it's already starting to make sense in my brain, for how it's all going to come together. So it was difficult for me in that I had to like start to order ahead of time and be like, okay, and then how are we going to get them from your farm to me? And they're doing a drop in San Francisco, but can we meet in, this little town in a parking lot? And so then I was meeting people in parking lots
Great.
with my van, and we'd like move the flowers up, and then I felt very suspicious because I was like, oh, are people watching? We're like trying to stay away from each other. We've got
Judging
our
you.
masks on. It was,
Yeah.
yeah. So it was
Ah,
just, it was a ton of work. It took way more work. Like driving, I would sometimes drive up to the farm, and the rose grower for me was like an hour away. So then I'm driving up to Sonoma County to get the roses, which is really cool
yeah.
because then you're on the farm and
If you can
you
get other
are,
things while you're up there.
yeah, and then see what else they might have. They always have other random things they're growing. Or I'd go to Half Moon Bay and visit my growers down there. And then it would turn into like a visit. And then all of a sudden it was like 5 hours later and then I have to start my processing. So
Yeah.
it was definitely time consuming, which at that time I did have time.
But it kind of eats into your profitability as a standard practice.
Of course it did.
Yeah.
It started to get really tiresome. And yeah, so then when we adopted a baby in April, and when that happened, I was just like, I gotta figure this out because that's not gonna work.
Right.
Thankfully, the market started to reopen,
Okay.
very few number of hours. But even that was pretty scary. Like all of a sudden, people again.
Yeah. Even though
So
it's kind of quasi open air, it's still a congregation of bodies. So
yes,
you probably went to try to go really early or, avoid the clusters because what else can you do?
yeah.
So right now you kind of have your regulars that you buy from, and now you've got kind of, because of this online ordering process, you can forecast early in the week what you're probably going to need for your Friday deliveries, right?
Yes, that is a major, major thing. So having that cutoff point, I'm kind of keeping track of it throughout the week. And it's so interesting how people order, but week to week depends on, like, this week's going to be very busy. So I had to cut it off earlier.
Like
Sometimes
when would you cut it off, on Wednesday or something?
Usually I cut it off the night before.
Okay.
Because I go and get flowers very, very early on Friday before I design. But when it starts to fill up too much, then I just have to cut it off, and that's up to you. And
Sure.
for me, I'm just like, okay, I do this for a certain amount of profit, but at some point it starts to like wear me down. So I can't, there's only one of me. I have an assistant. Again, we have to like kind of negotiate our space, and like thankfully my studio has like huge doors that we can open, and we can be outside a little bit. But navigating all this is just, it's kind of like carrying a little bit of a weight around.
Yeah, it takes a toll. Back to the Shopify tool. So when you decide to cut it off, you'll just put like sold out or something on that particular item.
I'll either put sold out, or right now what I do is I have a date so that they know what date it will actually be delivered.
Oh.
So
if they miss this week, then they can move it to next week and place the order.
Yes, and they can schedule for next week.
I remember, so we did a feature story about you in November of 2019 in Florist Review. That was the San Francisco issue. And I'll put a link to I have a PDF of that. I want people to be able to go read about you there. Plus the photos are beautiful. But I remember you walking me through that idea of a la carte events. You were very early in offering that as a model. I had heard about it from a few other people, but I think part of it is just training the customer to understand that this is okay. They don't need you to hold their hand the whole way through, right?
Yes.
So what do you offer? What are your SKUs on that section of your website?
Yeah, so the a la carte is for small events, and right now it's, there's a kind of an array. I mean, part of it is that over the 12 years I've been doing business, I've sort of seen what people like to order. And so I offer the things that most likely going to fit what they need. Larger kind of like statement arrangements come in some different sizes for them. So then they can choose based on their budget.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got the little bitties that they might want to use for a cocktail, or they might want to use multiple down a table or something like that. Then those come in some kind of different sizes. So very simple to like upgrade the vase or use fancier flowers kind of thing. And then of course centerpieces, based on sort of what I prefer to have as a budget I started at, so that I don't like to do really tiny. I like to do the little bitties in the vase, but I don't like to do tiny centerpieces.
Sure. I mean, your aesthetic is part of this whole thing. If they want you, they have to get on board with your aesthetic.
Yeah, for sure. So you can offer just like what it is that you like to do and you feel like people are interested in buying from you. Garlands, then they can put it on their own arch if they have an arch, or they can hang it from a tree, or whatever they want to do. So you're thinking about things that are basically going to fulfill their floral needs for their event, whether it's, a memorial or a wedding or a birthday or, a baby shower.
Yeah, but there's still like a couple dozen choices then in that section of the Gorgeous and Green website, right?
Oh yeah. So there's lots of different choices. And then once they choose, and sometimes they want to like talk about budget. And for me, what I say is like, even at the intro price, it's going to look pretty. It just depends on like how
Mm-hmm.
big or how,
Mm-hmm.
voluptuous you want it or how fancy of the flowers. So
So the idea of like not taking phone calls and using the Shopify sort of tool to interact with the customer at some point, I'm sure there are people who want to get on the phone with you, especially if they're going to spend a couple $1,000. So do you charge for a consult, or how do you manage that?
yes, so that is actually on there as one of the things they can buy.
You can buy my time.
Yes, you can buy my time
I
to
love
like
it.
sit down with you and talk it through.
Mhm.
So sometimes it's like somebody who's just very particular and they just want to know that everything is going to be a certain way. It's also that's actually a perfect time for me to be like, is this a good fit? If they're super particular.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and then or for me to be, like, hey, I'd be happy to have a consult with you. This is actually how I work. I work seasonally, so you can make suggestions, but I'm going to make the final decision, and it may not include all the things that you wanted. So I think oh, because people are coming to me, they know the work that I do, and I've been doing it for a long time. I think that they know that I'm going to do my best to make it beautiful. But at the same time, I also am very clear about my boundaries in
Mhm.
regards to sustainability
Mhm.
and, not, I'm trying to make it easier for myself so I can have a good time making these flowers for them. And I'm trying not to get stressed out about it. So,
Yeah. But I think you are pretty overt in your statements on your website about your local sourcing, your low, like low packaging, low waste, and
mhm.
then no floral foam. I mean, those are kind of the main messages that you're probably trying to convey to a Gorgeous and Green customer, right?
Yes, over and over again. And I think,
Darn
and I
it.
but I do, I get plenty. I've had customers that have been with me for all, the whole time. And I can look on my Shopify account and I can see how much they've spent with me over time and the number of orders. And sometimes it's crazy. I'm like, wow, if you spent like $5,000 on just like hand-tied bouquets for gifts over the
Mm,
past few years, but
mhm.
because they do it for Mother's Day and for, birthdays. And so I think that's really nice to
Yeah.
see. But yeah, I'm very clear about it. And when somebody wants something that I feel like I can't do, which I just told somebody yesterday, like I was going to do something for them. And then all of a sudden it morphed into something that it was going to be very last minute, was going to be difficult to do without floral foam. So I said, I don't use floral foam. I need more time to be able to get this together for you. Your best bet, if this is what you want, and just so you know, floral foam is not eco-friendly. It's plastic and it has toxins. But there are other florists who will work with
Mm,
it or who
mhm.
will do something or might just have the thing that you are looking for. So it's
Yeah.
okay to be like, you know what, I can't do that for
Yeah.
you. You
Yeah.
might find somebody else who can.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about your kind of stance because I first just came across you searching for articles about how the floral industry was responding to basically this product that is in California, it's labeled a carcinogenic on the box, right? And for any kind of floral foam product. And I found a bunch of blog posts that you had written back in 2013. So I just reached out to you. You used to have tons of information that and like links to, materials safety data sheets and all of that. But so you said some of that information is hard to come by now. It's almost
Yes.
like disappeared off the web. So how did that all play out when you first started doing it? And then what kind of, influence do you think you've had over the industry?
Well, when I first started, I named the business Gorgeous and Green because I always knew it was going to be about sustainability
Mm,
and
beautiful.
not just about because I like foliage, right? It was supposed to be like the green is like eco friendly,
Right.
and And I just was like questioning things like, what? I know I don't want to use floral foam, but what is this? Like,
Mm.
where do I find the information? So I looked and did some research online, and I found the MSDS sheets direct from one of the big manufacturers' websites. And they actually had they had a whole page I remember looking at of all these links to all of the MSDS sheets for all their major products. So, like, different sprays and different glues and, who knows what else on there. And so I just remember looking through the thing and seeing all these different products, and you could click on it and it would link you directly to an MSDS sheet that you could download.
That had like all the actual ingredients and yeah.
Yes, it had like all the details. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to write a blog post and I'm going to link directly to this MSDS sheet that I found. Well, lo and behold, I didn't realize about a year later, I think I posted that in 2009 or 2010.
Oh my God, you were so early on this.
And people started remarking, hey, this was like an old WordPress version of my blog. Hey, I can't get to it anymore. Where'd it go? And so I look back and I was like, oh, they took that whole page down. You could not get any of them anywhere. But somehow I had kept a downloaded version of it. So I basically copied word for word, copied and pasted the whole thing, which was huge, into a subsequent blog post and was like, hey, if you're still looking for this information, I've posted it here so you can read it.
Yeah.
And
it helped a lot of people.
Oh yeah. People were thankful. People were, have always been commenting about how, they just knew something was up with this stuff because they've been working with it forever. And, somebody was, I heard stories of like people saying I had high formaldehyde in my blood, and we were trying to figure out where it was coming from, or just like random interesting and sad health stories of floral designers who'd been working with it for a very, very long time.
Right.
And then people who are like, hey, because of this, I can actually go to my workplace and say, we need more ventilation. We shouldn't be like, basically have this, they were cutting it in where they're, processing their flowers, and it was just covering, the dust was covering everything. So like, we need to have a better situation to deal with this product. Or I don't want to like, I want to wear a mask when I'm cutting it, or whatever the thing is.
It's a health and safety issue. At the time you were retail. So maybe your audience were fellow retail florists who seems to be the category of florist who's got the higher volume kind of crank it out, quantity of using a recipe that requires foam. So you had your retail store for how long? It was the store in Berkeley that it was so cute. I'm looking at the photo of you on a bicycle in front of the old store, and it sort of says sustainable, I'm reading like, flowers, gifts. I'm sure there were other things on there, but it was just charming.
Yeah, it was really sweet. I think I opened the store in 2010, and I actually moved that store to a higher traffic location with like quadruple the rent.
Great.
But still in Berkeley. And I had it there for a few years. I think all told, I had the store, how long? Let's see, maybe 6.5, 7 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So like for the last 5 years, you've been
I've been
studio based.
Yeah, I've been studio based. I've been solely online. And I started the web store while I had the store, partially to help me navigate, because it was, I had retail store, I had employees, I sold flowers, I did events, I did flower deliveries. We also sold all this other product.
Like you sold art products from other artisans in your community, right?
Yes. So yeah. I was always searching for local artists or people who were, making things sustainably or using recycled materials. So it was like always an ongoing project to try to find stuff to stock, to try to be as sustainable as possible in the business practice. and then to also do this whole floral design thing, and then teach my employees to work with flowers. It was just like way too many things I was juggling.
Yeah.
So, and then doing weddings, and then I'd have to be, at the retail shop because it was also my studio after hours working on a wedding or something like that. So it was just kind of a lot. And it really was probably 3 or 4 different businesses.
Yeah. Well, Pilar, I mean, I think this is a good segue into saying that, well, those of you who listen to this podcast know that we've had to reschedule the Slow Flowers Summit, which was going to be in the Bay Area in June of 2020. It's been completely moved out to the exact same dates in 2021. And Pilar is one of our wonderful speakers who's going to be at the summit. And of course, she's not going anywhere. We're going to make her come to the 2021 conference. And your topic, your presentation is branding the sustainable floral business. So I'm thrilled that people can hear from you now and be reminded that that is going to, something that you can put on the calendar. We'll be making some announcements between now and the end of the year about how we're working with Filoli to make sure it's going to be a safe conference. But I'm thrilled that this topic is more timely than ever, Pilar, for you to come and talk about, because all the things you just discussed, you're alluding to the sustainable human. Like, you had to make this business work for you because you were going crazy with so many, different channels of income, all good probably, but each one of them could have been their own business.
Yes. Yeah. So I think really, and staying true, to the sustainability aspect, which is something that I'm continuously, thinking about, like in my future projects. How do I continue to stay true to who I am as Gorgeous and Green, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm excited about, the conference. I was really kind of bummed. I mean, I think we were all looking forward to it. And
yeah, I kept wishing that, COVID would go away in like a month, and I don't know. And Karen Thornton, my our event planner, was like, in March, she's like, I've read that when the temperature rises, it's a lot less likely to spread, and it'll be end of June in the Bay Area. It'll be really warm. So much for that, right?
Yeah. Well, we had no idea.
No,
we had no idea how it was.
No, and I'm also open to looking at hybrids. And I know, just like the fact that you and I are doing this interview on Zoom, I'm sure we're going to find a way to make the conference accessible for people who don't feel safe traveling, but who can still hear from all of the presenters and see, the demos and stuff. Put a pin in that. We haven't figured out the technology yet, but, we've time. I think also just all of us are used to that a little bit more, right? Like, you were saying, the contact-free delivery is like everyone's used to now. Like, we're just kind of learning how to be in this state.
Yes, it's the new normal.
Yeah, yeah. So, anyway, more on that soon, but I will put a link to the Slow Flowers Summit page and the description about Pilar's presentation in the notes too, because we're going to start talking about the summit coming up in December and getting our heads back into that. I think it's just we're waiting for the new year and the calendar page to turn so we can all breathe a sigh of relief.
Yes.
So on your business, you've had so many changes this year, and you told me earlier that you built you're building a new studio. So what brought that along or brought that into play, and how is that helping you do what you need to do with the business?
Yeah. So, with my husband and I have a property in downtown Oakland that he has built out a whole structure for his business. And then I manage another business that is a studio on that same property. It's a photo and film studio. And then we had this giant parking lot, and for what, it was just like a cement kind of vast, nothingness, and great for parking, which is, not that pretty. But we had the idea to actually create a studio for me on the property, and it would actually facilitate kind of this community living that we have going on, where we have the baby. Sometimes I might need to take a call or do a workshop, so I call on him to take over for an hour or two.
Because
Or
you're both entrepreneurs, so you both have
yeah,
your own businesses, right?
we both, and then we have 3 businesses between the 2 of us, which is a lot. And
Yeah.
then I can manage our other business from that property. So we took some used shipping containers and we put them on the property, and I basically have built them out
Ah, cool.
um, according to what I feel like I need. So that's really nice. Like, for the first time in 12 years, I have a walk-in cooler, which is a life changer.
You mean when
And
you were at your other studio, which was kind of in this cute little cottage, like a mother-in-law cottage type of thing, there was no cooler?
there was a cooler, but it was just my old, like, 3-door.
Oh, like a retail cooler.
And that thing was so old. I had bought it used from a florist back in 2010 who was going out of business, and it had already been probably 10 years old at that point.
It's like driving the Subaru until it dies. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
you got
I
a
really
lot out of that.
talk about being sustainable, man. I used that thing, and I tried to insulate it because it, was older, so it wasn't as well insulated. So I put all this foam up and, made sure that I talked to the cooler person about making sure it worked well so that it wouldn't waste energy. And I really drained that thing. So
So you had to retire that.
I retired it. Now we've got a walk-in that was actually a CoolBot,
Oh,
which
cool.
I like. So if people have questions about that, I'd be happy to share my experience. And then I have this cool space that has these cool French doors that open, which is really important for airflow right now, of course, with COVID.
And light,
Um,
too.
yeah, and light. And then we're building a deck, and then I'm gonna make the parking lot beautiful by creating garden space.
Oh,
So
neat.
that's sort of my ongoing project, is really kind of putting gorgeous and green kind of in the ground there.
That's
So I'm looking
cool.
for that. Yeah.
So the shipping containers, like, I know there's different sizes, but do you put 2 together or?
Yeah, we
Wow.
kind of made a L, I guess. We kind of cornered them in, and then we'll have a deck in between. And that way it's kind of like I can work outside if I want to. We'll have like a shade structure in between the 2. And
That's awesome.
yeah, and maybe in that, I don't know what COVID, I mean, we may be always dealing with COVID.
Right.
We don't know kind of what the future holds, or things like COVID. So it might be actually a really great place to have workshops, kind of have that indoor outdoor
Yeah.
experience to be able to do little tutorials out there.
That's
So yeah.
awesome. Okay, so did you paint one of the walls your signature blue that you always use for your photos? Because it is like, oh, I don't even know how to describe that blue. It's so luscious.
Yeah, I have the paint. I haven't decided which wall. I've been paying attention to the light, right? I
Right.
just happen to I lucked out with an amazing wall that got great light in my previous studio. So I have to make sure it's the right wall, because I want that natural light, because there's nothing like natural light on flowers.
It's part of your brand. It's so important.
It's really
All right,
important.
I wish you luck on that. And then also with the film and photography studio, you mentioned to me last time we talked that you were hoping to utilize that for Gorgeous and Green, which would sort of be a new channel for you then. And now you told me
Yes.
that before COVID.
I did. That was a plan I've had, and finally it's coming through for fruition, partially because I got some SBA loans
Great. You
because of
deserve them.
COVID,
Yeah.
right? And I said, well, what could I use, besides helping me pay some bills in the immediate time? How can I use this funding, to kind of progress my business? And so I'm actually going to pay my husband's company to help me produce some
Online
film or
content.
some content. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to that, and it'll be a lot easier now that I'm going to be kind of on site.
Yeah.
So
So you think you'll roll that out in 2021 or?
yes,
Okay.
that will be, we're kind of in pre-production now. So part of it is because I'm a seasonal floral designer, we're heading into a season where not as much is in bloom. So do I really want to work with stuff right now, or do I want to wait till the spring comes to like
Sure.
create some content? So that's always something,
That's a
to
big
think
deal.
about.
That's a big
Yeah,
deal.
big deal.
When that happens, does your business take a little bit of a lighter like demand on you in the winter because you don't want to? I know you don't import anything, but you also you sometimes don't even want to go outside of the Bay Area or the
Yeah.
larger Northern California area for your product, right?
Yeah, it does. It can have, people. The interesting thing about weddings is people are always getting married. So
Sure.
you make do with that. I do feel like it does have an effect on deliveries. There is kind of a slough that happens. And we make the most of it with like flowering kale, and roses are still in production, but it's just less varieties. And may or may not look as beautiful because they really like that heat to open up.
Right, right. So you're using more foliages and more
Or
kind of accent
dried,
flowers.
yeah, maybe some dried things, foliage, greenery. Um, but I think that the winter, unfortunately, in the Bay Area is pretty short.
Yeah.
And it seems to be getting shorter.
Yeah.
So it seems to go pretty quickly.
Okay.
And
so maybe
it's a good time to kind of just like come back together and like figure out how we're going to deal with all the weddings that got rescheduled.
Oh, geez. Yeah. Well, and like you said, you're in pre-production on the videos. That's just almost as much work as all that work happens before you turn the camera on.
Oh, yeah.
Record, right?
Yeah. You're basically trying to figure out everything, like materials and what are you,
storyboarding.
And like teachers, we don't often give them a lot of credit. And I feel like they don't get enough credit, but so much work goes into that kind of like before they actually are teaching.
Yeah.
Right. Like they're thinking through what is it that what theory am I trying to share? Or like, how is this going to transfer? So
you do some of that on your Instagram feed though. So I want to make sure that I send people to that. We add that link in the show notes because you're often posting not just beautiful pictures, but like the rationale behind what you did and where you got the product. And I feel like that's sort of your integral to your brand.
Yes. I'm always, I can be a pretty strong advocate for being, a slow flower member and being sustainable and not using floral foam. And I feel like I don't want the high pitched noise to eventually get like blurred out. I want people to still hear me. So I'm very careful about where I put it in.
Yeah.
I do, I might have a really strong message like every week or every other week where it comes through. And then I kind of allude to it maybe with some other beautiful photos. So I think you just have to be careful because if you're like, beating the drum so loudly constantly, eventually people tone it out.
I've had to learn that too, Pilar. I'm glad you brought that up. One of my friends who is working, this is very ironic, but in Seattle, there was this whole campaign, like 15 years ago to try to get people to accept letting their front lawns go brown in the summer and stop watering. And so they tried the whole campaign was a better way to beautiful. And it was sort of like, okay, let's show people beautiful low water landscapes that had native plants or whatever, to just show them an alternative and not make them feel guilty about watering their lawns, but just say, look, but this is a better option. And I sort of feel like that psychology does pay off. So
yeah, for sure.
So I think that, lead with beauty and then they'll be hooked.
Yes. Be like, yeah. And so I used this instead of this other thing. Because
That's great. Wow. Well, I am so glad we got to catch up and have this conversation for the podcast, just to kind of be a teaser to remind people that they're going to get to meet you in person and hear from you at the end of June at the Slow Flower Summit in 2021, but that you're available online all the time. And I'm just delighted that that you're in my life, and congratulations for sustaining your business for 12 years. I mean, that is a huge accomplishment. And even you get hit by these unexpected setbacks with COVID especially, and you're just adapting. And I think that's a message for all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I think that's half of it. Being a business owner is figuring out how to stay on your feet. So.
Okay, well, will you share? So I have some of the photos that you gave me last year for this Florist Review article, but I'm sure you have some groovy stuff that you can share, some newer things. And I think also I'll share a couple screenshots of your website, just how you've got it organized and the messaging, because I think that's really instructive. Anything I didn't ask you, Pilar, that I should have asked as we wrap up?
No, I actually, this is a question for people listening in, if you wanted to share. So I moved into a new house, and we live in it's a beautiful, more of a country living experience, but we are in a higher fire danger situation, which of course is also very stressful on top of everything else.
Yeah,
We've
seriously.
had so many fires on the West Coast. It's just been a really, really tough summer and fall. And so I'm building a garden. I'm landscaping and looking into kind of how to. I still want it to feel beautiful and full and lush, but at the same time, I'm really conscious of water and also fire safety. So if people have any thoughts on that, I'd be happy to
take the advice. I mean, how do you build a fire resistant or resilient landscape when which could potentially protect your house from burning down? Yeah. Wow, that's ominous. I know of some people in San Diego who've written about this because of course the fires in San Diego in the past have been just as bad. So I'll share if I can find that. I'm thinking of one particular article that a woman named Deborah Lee Baldwin wrote for a local paper about how a low water succulent garden protected her house. I'll see if I can find that, but my goodness. Okay, my dear, I don't think there's any rest for the weary, and it's we're talking on a Thursday and tomorrow's Friday, so I know what you're going to be doing.
Yes.
Great. Well, this has been fun, and thanks so much for sharing an update. I can't believe it's been 7 years since we had you on the podcast. That is in the category of where is she now? We've answered that question.
Yes. Great.
Thanks, Pilar.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining this lovely and uplifting conversation with a kindred spirit, one who is a role model for how to honor your mission and values through the way you build your business. You are in for a real treat next June because Pilar is one of the featured presenters at the 2021 Slow Flowers Summit, taking place June 28th through 30th, 2021 at Filoli in Woodside, California, which is outside of San Francisco. We will soon resume promotion and registration for the postponed 4th annual Slow Flowers Summit, and I'm thrilled that our host venue, Filoli, has done everything right to accommodate holding a safe, socially distanced experience for all of us. Pilar will present on branding the sustainable floral business. She'll discuss building an enduring brand around sustainable design and using her studio and platform to advocate for beautiful sustainability, including chemical-free design techniques and mechanics. You'll learn more about how Pilar's personal values have shaped Gorgeous and Green's brand and mission in the marketplace. And you'll be wowed as she demonstrates her signature floral style using all local botanical elements. In our show notes, you'll find a link to more details about the summit and a way to sign up for notices as we roll out an expanded speaker lineup, COVID-safe practices, and more details about the 2021 Slow Flowers Summit. And here's a podcast postscript. I'm recording the intro for today's episode on Sunday, November 8th. In the U.S., we have endured a long, drawn-out, and agonizing political season. I'm so pleased with the result of the presidential ticket that prevailed. Joe Biden is our president-elect, and Kamala Harris, our vice president-elect, the first woman, the first Black woman, and the first person of Asian descent to be elected to this office. I'm exhaling. I've heard from so many of you who are doing the same. If you didn't support the Biden-Harris ticket, my wish for you is to have an open mind and to join me in a pledge to listen, speak my own truth, and show compassion for all humans. Slow Flowers is committed to sustainability in all its forms, including sustaining dignity, equity, and inclusion for people like us and people not like us. And as long as we're talking about elections, we want to congratulate Slow Flowers member and recent guest of this podcast, Stacy Brenner of Broadturn Farm in Scarborough, Maine. On November 3rd, Stacy posted this message on social media. I'm so grateful to announce that the voters in Buxton, Gorham, and Scarborough have voted for me to be the next state senator of our district. I congratulate my opponent on a well-run campaign, and I promise to do my very best for our community in Augusta. Well, congratulations to Maine's newest state senator and flower farmer, Stacy Brenner. Our next sponsor thanks goes to Longfield Gardens, which provides home gardeners with high-quality flower bulbs and perennials. Their online store offers plants for every region and every season, from tulips and daffodils to dahlias, caladiums, and amaryllis. Check out the full catalog at Longfield Gardens. That's longfield-gardens.com. It's time to announce 2 giveaways. The winner of a complimentary registration to Ellen Frost's new online workshop, Growing Your Business with Local Flower Sourcing, is Zoe Dellinger of Dell Acres Farm and Greenhouse in Edinburgh, Virginia. Congratulations, Zoe. You'll hear from Ellen with all the details very soon. And congratulations to Amy Stoker of Lucky Bee Cut Flowers of Longmont, Colorado. As one of more than 200 respondents to our annual Slow Flowers member survey, your name was randomly selected for the big prize, full registration to the 2021 Slow Flowers Summit, valued at $599. You'll get to meet us at Filoli in late June and meet Pilar Zuniga, today's podcast guest, in person. We'll be sharing the insights from the member survey in the coming months. It was a huge success with more than 25% member participation. If you're listening to this episode on Wednesday, the 11th of November, there's still time to join the next Slow Flowers member virtual meetup this Friday, November 13th. You're going to meet and learn from 2 expert Slow Flowers members who specialize in growing and designing with dried flowers. We'll be joined by Heather Henson of Boreal Blooms and Bethany Little of Charles Little & Company. Now more than ever, your Slow Flowers membership gives you an important narrative and mission to share with your community and your customers. You'll be inspired by these 2 women who are doing that in their businesses. So join the Slow Flowers member virtual meetup Friday, November 13th. It's at 9 a.m. Pacific time, noon Eastern time. You can find the link, which we'll have in today's show notes, to log in and join us on Zoom. We hope to see you there. The Slow Flowers podcast has been downloaded more than 657,000 times by listeners like you. Thank you for listening, commenting, and sharing. It means so much. As our movement gains more supporters and more passionate participants who believe in the importance of the American cut flower industry, the momentum is contagious. I know you feel it too. I value your support, and I invite you to show your thanks with a donation to support my ongoing advocacy, education, and outreach activities. You can find the donate button in the column to the right at deborahprinzing.com. Our final sponsored thank you goes to the Seattle Wholesale Growers Market, a farmer-owned cooperative committed to providing the very best the Pacific Northwest has to offer in cut flowers, foliage, and plants. The Growers Market's mission is to foster a vibrant marketplace that sustains local flower farms and provides top quality products and services to the local floral industry. Visit them at seattlewholesalegrowersmarket.com. I'm Deborah Prinzing, host and producer of the Slow Flowers podcast. Next week, you're invited to join me in putting more American-grown flowers on the table, one vase at a time. And if you like what you hear, please consider logging onto iTunes and posting a listener review. The content and opinions expressed here are either mine alone or those of my guests alone, independent of any podcast sponsor or other person, company, or organization. The Slow Flowers podcast is engineered and edited by Andrew Brenlin. Learn more about his work at soundbodymovement.com.